Hi, this is Eric with Project 130R and welcome back to our channel. Today is a pretty exciting day for all of us here because this is our very first engine that we've pulled and we're going to completely disassemble, strip all the way down, and rebuild and put into our very first Legend project. So this will be a complete restoration and it will go from the absolutely disgustingly dirty state that it's in right now into something shiny and new and amazing. At least that's our plan. So if you're not super familiar with Honda V6s, this is a C-Series V6. It was their first generation of V6s from the mid 80s up until 2004 was the last year that you could get those. And then starting in the late 90s, they started phasing in the J-Series V6s that you're probably more familiar with that you see on the road everywhere today in any Honda or Acura that offers a V6. So this was available in anything from a 2-liter naturally aspirated or turbocharged in Japan only, all the way up to what we have here, which is a 3.5 liter. These you could get in the 1996 to 2004 Acura 3.5 RL. And basically it's a continuation of the version that's in the Legends that we built, 91 to 95 Legends. There's a lot of similarities. It's just that the bottom end is 3.5 liters displacement instead of 3.2. Perhaps most famously, this engine, a version of this engine was in the first generation NSX, the 91 to 2005, except in that version of the C-Series, it had dual overhead cam heads and VTEC. And in the Legend engines, it was single overhead cam, so one cam here and one cam over there, and non-VTEC. One other thing to remember too is that unlike most V6 front-wheel drive platforms, in the second generation Legend and the 3.5 RL, the V6 is mounted longitudinally, so that's the front of the car, and the engine sits this way and the transmission points towards the back. So you have the belts and the accessories on the front, you have the two banks on either side of the car this way, and then the transmission behind, almost where the driver sits. So it's kind of a unique setup, and just one of the things that adds to kind of the character of these cars. But we feel these engines still have a ton of potential, so we're gonna give this a full send. The good news is the last time you're gonna see it like this. This engine's been sitting for just a minute, so I can see all kinds of crap in here. There's bolts down there, there's leaves, all this is gonna come off. Every single piece of this is gonna come off all the way down to the block. We're gonna strip it all the way down, clean it thoroughly. One of the very first things we're gonna do is make the block just a tad bigger. More to follow on that. And then everything you see is going to be either restored or polished up or replaced or renewed in some way so that the entire thing is brand spanking new and runs like a well-oiled machine. So one thing to note, if you are not used to working on a 90-degree V engine, this is a big boy. If you're used to something like a 60-degree V6 or a smaller V8, this thing takes up a lot of real estate. Not just the engine itself, but this bell housing is just massive. Again, if you're not used to this type of setup, you can imagine this might come off a truck or something. So really quickly, this is the front of the engine. You have the timing belt here underneath these timing covers. That's the crank pulley and alternator. So on top of the engine, usually here there would be an intake manifold sitting here in between the heads. We took that off and put that elsewhere, so we're going to be restoring that and putting that back in once we put the engine back together. These are ignition coils. This is not a distributor system. These are a coil-on plug, like an NSX would be. And then here on the back side of the engine, of course, you have your cooling pipes and your EGR system here, and the transmission and the exhaust going back to the back of the car. So that's kind of a quick look at how a C-Series V6 is set up. And we'll give you a much more detailed look in the weeks and months to come. One thing we did get on this car, and it just happened to come with the car, is this set of headers. And from what we understand, this is one of the very early designs of the OBX header, which is the only aftermarket header that's ever been made for a C-Series V6. Yeah, this one's seen better days, no doubt about it. It's very well worn. There's a bit of surface rust on it. I'm not entirely sure if this can be brought back and used in any way. I might take it off and use it on more of like a test bed car. I would much rather see a brand new set of headers go on any sort of car that we sell to a customer. But we do have this, and we'll take it apart and see how it looks and go from there. So what you see here is this is the complete engine. Nothing's been taken off this car, except I believe we took off the AC compressor and tossed that in the trash because we're not going to use that. Most of this is 130, 150,000 miles. The good news is, from what I understand, this engine was working when it was last installed in the car. I believe the only reason that the car wasn't running was a clutch cylinder was bad. So I'm hoping that's the case and that the internals of this are still in decent enough shape that we can polish them up and use them and put this thing back on the road as soon as we can get our project car done. One thing to note on this engine is that to make this 3.5 liter fit into a Legend body, you basically have to cut a 3.5 mount and a 3.2 mount in half and weld them together to kind of adapt the engine mount to the body of the car. And as you can see, this one snapped before we could get it out of the car. It just fell apart. So we're gonna have to re-engineer and redo this engine mount, and we'll make it better than it was before. So I'm excited to start taking everything apart. We're gonna disassemble this piece by piece, and at the same time, we're gonna be disassembling our first project car, our first Legend restoration. So we'll be filming these kind of either side by side or one then the other or something along those lines. But we'll be posting a lot of content, see what kind of condition this engine is in. I'm a little curious, even though a lot of this stuff we're not going to be reusing, but I'm a little curious, and hopefully the parts that we do need to reuse will be intact and in good shape. Oh, one of the most important things I forgot to mention, this is a 6-speed manual transmission. So those are kind of hard to come by. They were only available from 93 to 95 on the Legends that got the Type 2 engine. So we have the full swap and all the components that go along with this. So we're gonna be making our very first Legend build a 6-speed manual. So we're excited about that too. So thanks for taking a look at this engine with us. We're really excited to start taking it apart, see what we find. We're all kind of nerds that way. And then developing everything that's needed to put it back together to make it into what we're hoping will be a Legend masterpiece. Thanks for joining us.